Hi guys, Tina Salinas here from We Are the Voice for the Silenced and Afflicted. I do apologize. We were supposed to be on a little earlier. We were having some technical difficulties. We figured it out though. How's again? I have Angela here who has had a story going on for quite some time right now, and I'm going to let her explain in a little bit her horrific situation and her plead from her daughter. Um, Also, after I'm finished with the podcast, due to our technical difficulties, I will be adding in and incorporating some of her court appearances along with any other information she would like attached to the podcast, just to give you a little bit of a better look on her situation. Before we start, I would like to say please go to care2.com to sign Malachi's Law. Um, this law is specifically designed to protect domestic violence and child abuse victims. We all know that the courts are criminalizing the protective parents for whatever reason and praising the abusive parents, which continuously have been putting our children and re-victimizing them over and over again. So again, go to care2.com. It's Malachi's Law. Sign the petition, share it, like it, do whatever you can, get the word out there. We need to stand up, rise up against this corruption that is just widespread and systematic, and it's absolutely sickening. Angela, thank you for coming on our show. I know we had a little difficulty again. I do apologize. We're here though, so I'm going to let you talk and explain your story. If there's anything else that you want to include for them to go to, maybe a certain site or webpage or YouTube channel that you would like to make the audience aware of, the floor is yours. Go right ahead. Thank you
Thank,
again for being a part of the show.
thank you for having me. Yeah, my story's been going on for quite some time. It's been a long battle. I finally seen my daughter recently. I got to talk to her for a few minutes, but going back in February, she came home for Christmas after being moved from Missouri to Montana to live with her dad. Um, and she'd only been living with him for 6 months. And she come home, and when she come home, she decided she wasn't going back because she was suicidal there. She was depressed there. She didn't feel comfortable there, and she disclosed he had been touching her. So when time came for her to go back, she doesn't go back with to her dad's. So he, instead of talking and working this out and understanding that maybe she doesn't want to live with him, he goes and proceeds with all these frivolous court documents. First, it was a temporary restraining order, and they show up at my house trying to take her. And when the police came, they couldn't verify the TOR, and they couldn't get a hold of CPS. Her dad wasn't even in town, but they were there to take her. I I don't know what they were going to do with her, but they came to take her. Well, they don't get her, and so we go to court, and because of COVID, so it's over the telephone, and she gets me to consent to the TOR, and I don't realize what I'm doing at the time because I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know about all the tricks that they play to wrap you up in this, where you can't get out. There's just, they cut all ways of escaping from this system out. It's well planned out, every step they're making. They know exactly what they're doing. So she gets me to consent to this TOR and tells me, orders actually Delilah and I into the courtroom on February 3rd. That morning, I knew it was a trap, and Delilah didn't want to go, so we just didn't go. Um, they were, forcing her. So then we do another. They actually, that day, they went ahead and did a preliminary injunction hearing without me knowing, and took my custody from me at that point. And they hide this from me at the time, so I don't know this has happened. And I request a phone conference on the 5th of February. We do another phone hearing conference, and Delilah tells him again in court, how she's depressed there, she's suicidal there, he's been touching her, she doesn't want to go back, she doesn't understand why they're forcing her to go back into that situation. Disregard everything she's saying again. Order us to come in for February 10th. So February 10th rolls around, I take her into the courtroom. When we get there, We were met by police officers, security guards. They ended up escorting us up to the courtroom where we were met by more police officers and security, whatever. And we're in the courtroom, and that's the audio that was released of her begging the judge not to send her with her dad. And then shortly after all that happened, they arrested me in front of her. And so I get arrested, and I'm down the hall, cuffed and sitting, waiting to go to the jail because I was arrested on a criminal contempt motion that the judge did on her own. She moved, she did the motion.
But
So
Angela,
she,
didn't in the one recording, because I know I've listened to quite a few of them, and I kind of want to, in a little bit, kind of go backwards, but let's finish this one up real quick. In the one court recording that you did have, you were on the phone. It wasn't a court appearance, but you were on the phone speaking with the judge, and I remember the judge stating that, if you come in, she doesn't want to hold you in contempt of court. But when you went in that day, that court recording, she was pretty much very blatant on threatening your daughter that if she doesn't comply with going with her father after she pleaded, with the judge saying, no, he's abusive, he's I don't want to be around him. The judge basically said, well, it's the court orders and it's court's preference. Um, didn't Even though you complied and brought her into court, the judge still basically threatened if your daughter wasn't going to comply, she was going to arrest you. Is that what actually put you in handcuffs? Is because your daughter basically didn't want to go with the father?
exactly, that's exactly why I was arrested that day. They knew the only way to take Delilah was for me not to be there. They weren't going to
Right.
get her from me, because it's all trickery. It's, they get you to give jurisdiction up when you don't have to. You have all the rights as a parent when you walk into that courtroom, and you hand them over. You hand your rights over, and then wait to see if you can get them back. So it's a trick. They never should have had
Yeah, I
jurisdiction
it
with
was
my daughter.
you're right, and it was very upsetting and concerning actually because they had already, you had already walked into court with her, as stated, in the phone conference that you had with the judge. And the judge had already stated that day, even though it wasn't on record, as she stated as well, that she was not going to hold you in contempt as long as you upheld and abided by bringing your daughter in, which you did. Then it got
Yeah,
to the point to where your daughter was already in the courtroom, and basically, just because your daughter was standing up for her own rights and what she believed in and her fear of her father, the courts just continued to basically threaten her with your with jeopardizing, you being or you going to jail. And that was, I guess that's what concerned me a little bit because it was like she's trying to tell the judge, listen, no, I don't want to do this. The judge is
yeah.
going, well, if you're not complying, we're just going to throw your mom in jail. And I'm going, wait a
Paul even
minute,
told
she's
the
here.
judge. Yeah, she even told the judge, it's not her, it's me. I'm the one that doesn't want to go back. Why are you
Yep.
going to put her in jail? Why are you going to put my mom in
Hmm.
jail? Because I don't want to go with him. So yeah,
Right.
she did it anyway. Yeah, she threatened me
And
one
her
year, almost to the day, to put me in jail the February before and take my daughter and send her to Montana and take her from me. In February of 2020, she
right.
was threatening me. So I knew that ultimately she was going to do this. I drug it out for a year. It
Right.
was a year almost
Now,
to the
if you
day
want to
where
back
she
up
got
just
daughter.
Yeah. If you want to back up just a little bit, like we were talking prior to the show, the reason I had sought you out was because I had heard a recording prior to this, which was a court recording. If you can explain to everybody, I think we had spoken June, but this was a court appearance prior to that. The whole purpose of the judge arresting you was because your own daughter had recorded a um, court appearance and it was put on the internet. And basically, the judge had stated to you she was going to arrest you because of your daughter releasing this information. Can you explain to people what happened back then and then kind of following from after that, bringing us to present day so they can get a little better hand on kind of in the beginning how this started and where the biasness of the judge came from?
Say what you want to know again, because I think you might have something a little confused. What did,
So there was a court appearance. Yeah, there was a court appearance that happened where the judge was threatening to arrest you because your daughter had released something, or maybe I think she recorded a court appearance and then it was put on the internet.
that was the same day. That was the February
It
10th.
was the same day. That was the February 10th.
Okay, I
Yeah, that was on.
apologize.
Because see, some of that was on the record and a lot of it was off the record. When Delilah was pleading with that judge, all of that was off the record. Her dad's lawyer already had left and was gone, and she was supposed to be leaving with him. So we go on the record, and she asked me if I brought Delilah in and if anybody has any motions. I tell her I have motions, and she says, no, no, we won't get to your motions today, but you can go ahead and file them, because they had stopped filing for me at that point. I don't know, 6 months or something. They wouldn't file any paperwork for me. So I had everything I had was to counteract everything they were doing in court that day. I had paperwork that I typed up to drop the TRO, to put one actually on him, to get rid of the GAL, Venus Jackson, because she obviously was not looking out for the best interest of my child. She was completely on dad's side. That was totally against me. So I had paperwork to recuse her. I actually had paperwork to recuse the judge that day, and she wouldn't take my paperwork. She said, at the end of this, you can go ahead and file. Well, she already knew she was going to arrest me. So we do this whole hearing, and then Delilah's to leave. I told her, yes, I brought Delilah in to give her to her dad. So Delilah is supposed to be leaving and going with her dad, and she goes in the back, and then she comes out. And the recording of Delilah pleading with her was completely off the record. His attorney had already left. Delilah was supposed to be leaving. She didn't leave. She wouldn't leave with him. So she's threatening him. And then we go back on the record, and that there's a recording of that I don't think has ever been released. And we go back on the record, and then that's when they discover that the phone is recording, and take the phone from me, stop, bring up all the stuff on the internet and arrest me. That was the day. And they put me in contempt for 48 hours. So they arrest me like in front of my daughter. Yeah, and I can hear her down the hall screaming, like pleading and screaming from the courtroom. I don't understand. Why are you forcing me to go with him? There was nothing I could do. I was in cuffs. I had 3 security. The whole time they had like 3 security guys standing on me, so I couldn't do anything. The whole time after they cuffed me, they sat with me. And Venus Jackson comes into a room and yells at me about, why didn't I say something sooner, or something? I don't remember exactly, or do some certain forensic something, because then they could do something, because they just didn't want to take Delilah at her word. That wasn't good enough. But she made accusations, that everything they were doing should have stopped at that point. And they should have focused on her accusations and what was going to be in her best interest, instead of forcing her to go with him, because that's the court order.
So was there ever CPS involved or any doctor visits pertaining to any of her accusations that you could have brought into court, or maybe, used for the
Not at
judge, and maybe she just didn't pay attention to it, or
No, not at that point, because Delilah had never said anything like that before. She started calling home and telling me things he was doing just a few weeks before she came home for Christmas. So that's when like the grooming process was starting.
right?
And so she kept calling and telling me, and we would live so far away that I was just like, well, tell your school counselor, because there's not much I can do in Missouri when she's in Montana, and I want to make sure that it doesn't look like I'm trying to make accusations and tell a story. So I had Delilah report it to her counselor after a couple weeks of her calling home, really uncomfortable about the things her dad was doing. And then when she would tell him that she wasn't comfortable with it, he would ask her, what are you going to do about it? Cry? And so that really just, as a mom and a woman, that just irked me, like, I'm going to do this to you, and you're not going to have a voice to say anything about it, is basically what I hear coming from that. And so she reports it to the school counselor. The school counselor reported it to CPS out there, and they did an interview. but it was the case was closed for unsubstantiated evidence or something. I don't know what the investigation included or anything. They wouldn't give me any information. And then we called CPS when she come home, and we made a report. And then the hospital made like 3 or 4 reports. But from what I understand, Venus Jackson called CPS and told them that the judge found that there was no abuse, and they closed all the cases promptly. Like that was the end of CPS. So they didn't tell me anything. They didn't say anything. They didn't interview. They didn't do anything except for find that it was closed in Montana. So they closed it here in the state of Missouri. After
You said the
Delilah's,
hospital.
the hospital made, I think,
You said the hospital did it.
Yeah, the CPS just closed it because of they closed the case in Montana. So Missouri CPS closed their cases, all of them. Because the hospital, I know, hotline 3 times.
And you didn't have anything from the hospital itself, like in regards to the situation?
The hospital won't give me anything. Nobody will give me anything. Venus Jackson was on the case. The judge recused herself, so we were sitting without a judge. So nothing could be filed to move on to do anything. And then there's, time limits on stuff. So, but nothing can start moving. So, this is really planned out, like I was telling you earlier. So now that the judge recuses herself, I can file, but nothing's going to happen. So they've stopped any progress on the case. And they wait long enough. They wait all this time before they give me another judge. And so by this time, I'm out of time to file anything that's going to do anything. And then that judge at that first court date, after 4 months of waiting to get a judge, recused himself on the spot. And so I'm left without a judge again. And Venus Jackson's still on my case. And when I would call her and ask her anything, she would tell me she knew nothing to call her dad. But come to find out.
So it seems like
it was really frustrating, because now that I do have some of the medical records, and the only reason I have those is because of the last court day we went to, they had them as an exhibit. That's the only reason I have the records from Children's Hospital. And from what I'm seeing in there, Venus Jackson was well involved and was making decisions for to medicate my daughter with black box warning medicines. She was making these choices. So my daughter's on these meds that potentially could kill her because of the meds she's on. They're not safe.
So it seems as if, like they would say in sports or maybe a job, you've been blackballed on pretty much doing anything to further your extent to protecting your child. And it doesn't seem as if anybody's trying to work with you.
They've cut me completely off from my daughter. I'm still cut off from her, completely cut off. She still hasn't called home. The only reason I've talked to her is because we were in court, and I told them I want proof of life today. I mean, I went back to court in July, demanding proof of life of my daughter. In July, they wouldn't give me proof. Nobody would give me proof of life of her. The GAL wouldn't, the judge wouldn't, the opposing side wouldn't. Nobody would tell me where she was, if she was okay. And this is going on at that point, like 5 months, 6 months, like my daughter called home, said she was being moved. The phone call got hung up on, the phone got taken from her, and they hung up on me. And I haven't heard from my daughter since.
So they never even gave you any visitations within that last court then, even though they were condemning you, of course, but there was still never any visitations. I mean, this is ridiculous. So you're supposed to just sit around and wait for, what are you waiting for?
For my daughter.
Another court hearing for them to pull in? Like, I don't.
Well, they have manipulated, brainwashed, and drugged her to the point that she doesn't want to see me. She said that she's gotten help.
Wow.
Yeah. That until I get help like she.
What help?
Well, because she went to that facility in Wyoming. They put her in a drug rehab because they said she had methamphetamines and marijuana in her system. And so they put her in a rehab, and that was in Wyoming. So she goes from the state of Missouri. She gets taken from here, by a third party, an uncle on his side, and she gets taken to Arizona. She's in Arizona for about a month. And from Arizona, she got moved to a rehab facility where nobody would tell me where she is. So I hired a private investigator. We pinpointed a facility, but I could not verify that she was there. And I can't leave state because I'm out on bond. So I couldn't go to that facility and see if my daughter was there because I would have. But if I leave state and get in trouble, that could put me back in jail for forfeiting my bond, and my bond in jail for $75,000. So I didn't want to jeopardize that. So there was no going to find her there. But she was there. I found out that was the place she was at. And they actually have that class action lawsuit for child laboring and trafficking right now that they're fighting. That, girls are coming forward with their stories of the abuse that they endured while they were there at their facility. It's called Trinity Teen Solution.
I'm sorry, what is it called again? I cut you off. I apologize.
That's all right. Trinity Teen Solution in Wyoming. I want to say it's Powell, Wyoming. It's in the middle of nowhere, and they're using them as ranch hands, irrigating pipes and working the farm animals. They're not just getting this great experience to work with their problems. They're laboring these kids out there on the ranch, and they're in the middle of nowhere. So if you would try to escape from there, where are you going to go? You're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's bears, there's all kinds of things out there. I mean, the chances of dying are like highly likely, especially if you're not from that kind of environment. And then nobody's coming in and taking you out of there because they could see you coming because it's in the middle of nowhere. So these girls, the one girl got stuck there for a year. She turned 18. The people told the family that she wanted to stay, and they wouldn't let the girl talk to her family. So it took her a year to escape from there after she turned 18. And there's just no way out.
A couple people want to know. A couple people want to know if your rights have been terminated, actually through this process, or has it even been mentioned or inquired about, or know anything about, how that's going to go?
No, my rights have not been terminated. What they did was at that injunction hearing, they gave him sole legal and physical custody until the court says otherwise, and gave me no visitation.
So wait a minute, they gave him sole custody, you just said?
Yeah, we've always had 50-50 custody. Always. She's lived with me all her life. 6 months there, and here we are 6 months later, because they moved her there. And then so here, this is, 6 months later of still having 50-50, and they pull it. As soon as Delilah disclosed any kind of abuse, they pulled my custody. And they used it because...
And that was the only explanation that they had, just to take out your, I'm sorry, that was the only explanation that they had?
Well, their reasoning is I was alienating him was why they took her. And then they just constantly throughout all of it say, I don't follow court orders because I don't say how high when they say jump. They took my kid from me.
Right.
Because I questioned everything. I, didn't understand why they were doing what they were doing. It never made sense to me from the very beginning. I didn't understand how somebody had more say over my child than I did. I couldn't accept it. So I would butt heads with the judge because of it. She was threatening to take my child.
Right. Yeah, I give you a lot of credit. I've listened to quite a few of those recordings, and I'm just like, wow. I don't think some of us even get a minute with the judge sometimes, but thankfully you were, and I kind of wish that you had a little better circumstances, and her behavior towards you worked out a little bit better, because she came across as if she was trying to be on your side, but you can read through her wording and her demeanor. She most definitely wasn't. And
No.
again, she was very blatant about her preference, the court's preference, as she kept stating, is that your child should be with the father, no matter what your child stated or no matter what you stated as a protective parent. And
Slaves.
that's another situation that we just continue to see. I'm sorry, go ahead.
She made us slaves. We were at her mercy. She was controlling our lives at that point. Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
we became
sad.
slaves. I mean, everything
And
up
you would think that they would have,
everything up to
you would
that.
think,
What was the judge going to do? Can we do this? Is it going to be bad for the judge? Me and Delilah were living like in fear. We were no longer living our lives. Um, they took our free will from us.
right. Yeah, I was hoping the judge would have a little bit of empathy, I guess, once she heard your daughter stand up and speak. But I think they feed off of that. You know, it's something that empowers them even more when they see a protective mother in your situation that is upset, which we have a right to be. And that's another thing. The courts make it seem as if it's a terrible thing to be a parent and also have emotions. It's like we're not allowed to have these emotions. If we
That's
are, we're pegged as crazy or we're lunatics.
that's the gaslighting. That's the manipulation. That's the psychological warfare, mind control that they're doing to people. It's to trick you and just to be compliant. It's oh, I wish I would have known about what the court like I know now then, because I didn't there there was a lot of things that I didn't know. Some of it was just my pure like innocence basically. I just don't understand. There's the one recording I'm sure you probably haven't heard from the February before in 2020. I was like, I just don't understand. I don't understand. And you could tell I truly didn't have an understanding what was happening and why it was happening like that because it didn't make sense what they were doing. And to me, like I couldn't rationalize it, in my brain. And it was like that the whole time. But when you realize that it's a play and that they're gaslighting you, they're manipulating you, the family court is set up to take kids, to take your money. It's not for the family. It's a trick. And you end up giving away your rights like we really truly became slaves, and you have all those rights before you ever step into court, so it's not theirs to take. They never really truly have jurisdiction over you to be making these decisions to destroy your child, your child's life. And that's what another thing I just didn't understand. How does somebody get to make bad choices for my kid when you're obviously making poor choices? I can't stand and just sit by and watch you do that. Like, so I emailed the judge a lot, actually, quite a bit. Never threatened her, but I did email her a lot. And at one point I told her, if you're not part of fixing the problem, you're part of the problem,
Right.
because what you're doing is not healthy for my daughter. And it's a
That's
shame.
their whole motive, though.
Yeah, it is.
That's their whole motive. That is their yeah, our movement is to protect our children and be there to stand up for what's right. Their movement and their whole, corrupt scheme is specifically to filtrate money in, and that's all it's about. When are they going to get their next steak dinner? What are they going to do for the week? Off the backs of our children being abused and
And
neglected,
it's about
and the fact that us, it's about what? I'm sorry.
it's about control, them controlling us. They're
Yes.
gonna be they're if they keep moving in this direction, we're not gonna have freedom. It will be gone. I mean,
Yeah.
they just trampled all of my rights, all of them, down to my gun rights. I mean, they took my gun. Like they have just come against all of my rights, all of them. I don't have rights, and that's the scary thing. When they take one person's rights, you're next. Like they're gonna keep taking rights, and I'm not. If I don't have rights, you don't have rights. So, that's one of the scariest things about it is that the slavery, like we felt like we were enslaved. We couldn't do anything. I've slowly been taking their hooks out of me through this, like the question about the custody. So they take the sole custody. Well, we were in court in November, and that is we have another trial in January, and that's where we're at now. They're trying to give me 50-50 custody and him sole legal custody. Well, the sole legal is what kept me from being able to get anything from my daughter these last 9-10 months, where they just took her and did whatever, where I can't get school records, I can't get medical records, I can't get anything, of my daughter that I shouldn't have a problem getting. It's never been an issue before. So that's where we're at now. They want to give me 50-50 custody. So what I believe is that, the TOR is no longer in good standing. So we're back to the original, well, not the original, but judgment, the parenting plan. This is how I understand it, in August that we had that moved her to her dad's. But he's not allowing me to talk to her. She's not reaching out. He doesn't respond to anything, none of my text messages or anything. Like, they've just cut me off from her, because the manipulation and the brainwashing. If she's around me too long, that starts to wear off. Because a good way to put it is basically they took her and they just rocked her back to sleep. And if she gets around me, I'll wake her up again. But what they want to happen is for me to go get help like she did, so they can rock me to sleep so I can be compliant. Right. And I won't do that. So they were trying to offer me 2 hours a month Zoom calls with her. And I told them I'd wait. She's 15. I'll wait the 2 years. I'm not doing that. They wanted to take all my rights from me. And I told them, no, you're going to give me back my rights. I'm going to have my 50-50 sole legal, sole physical. I'm going to take that. But if she doesn't want to see me, that's fine. But I'm not doing your 2-hour Zoom, pay all this money to go up to the courthouse that they have already been awful to me at. And I have to be escorted through there because they think I'm a danger. So I have to have cops follow me everywhere in the courthouse. No, I'm not doing that. They were kind of shocked by it, but we're still going back because they couldn't settle anything with me. So, and that's what parents usually would do. I have it recorded, them sitting there trying to convince me to go ahead and just give them my sole legal. Because why? Because, people just don't want to keep coming back to court. It's so expensive.
Right.
It's just cheaper if you just go ahead and sign right here and let him have sole legal, because, you guys don't communicate well. And it's going to be really hard to make decisions. And here I'm sitting there. This is what, I'm sitting there going, no, wait a minute. These are my rights. You're not going to take my rights from me. They're my rights. So now they're just trying to attack my rights. They just want to, and that's what I'm fighting for still. If Delilah wants to see me, she'll call me, she'll talk to me. My door's always open, but I can't get past what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? So until we make changes, this is where we're going to come. Like, this is what they're going to do. They're going to continue to do it. Like, I have no way to go get her. I can't leave state. They won't let me see her. They wanted, then they gave me an option to do supervised visits with me traveling to Montana and then having a supervised visit with her, once a month or something, or whatever their little offer was. And that in itself was just ridiculous. Who's going to pay to travel to Montana to have an hour supervised visit with your child?
Right.
Nobody's going to do that. Who's going to do that? Like, no, get out of here. I mean, I will do anything for my daughter. I love her and I will fight to the hills for her. But I am not traveling to Montana for an hour supervised visits with her and to pay you guys to do it to me. And that's where they're used to parents buckling, because parents will do anything for their children. And there's just a line where you have to draw for yourself. Where is my self-respect? Where's my, my respect for just myself? No, you're not, that is like making me less than something than I am. I'm her mother. One, should never have supervised visits. Two, shouldn't have to go to jail over this stuff and have to fight for this and sit back and watch somebody make poor decisions for my daughter. It doesn't make sense. And I think
our question now is what's the true definition of parenting nowadays, because of the family court and the CPS corruption. It seems as if they've taken over that definition as if judge. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're not allowed to be parents. We're not allowed to be parents. No. Not allowed to be.
No.
You're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to have emotion. It's mind control. It's really messed up what the court system is, actually.
Yeah, yeah, and it's happening way too frequently. A lot of people that I speak to say basically very similar situations where the courts come in and pretty much tell you because you're the protective parent, you're the one in the wrong. And
Mhm.
we're gonna criminalize you, and we're gonna demoralize you at the same time. Unfortunately, not too many people are able to stand up, and it's not that they don't want to, but they're very intimidated and scared
Still,
because they feel as if you s like, as what you said, is their freedoms are being taken away, and they have to weigh it out on going, "Do I stand up and do what's right for my child even though I really want to, or am I going to face jail?" Which in return, what's gonna happen when you go to jail anyways? You know, that abuser or that narc or whoever you're dealing with at the time that is controlling the courts as a puppet, they get away with it, and they're allowed to continue manipulating and controlling.
and
But
that
it's such a
happens either way.
contradiction because
But
yeah,
it
and
still
it's such a
happens.
contradiction because
So that's why you stand
yeah,
up and you go to jail. That's why you do it, because now you're bringing more attention and you're standing up, more and more people doing this. What are they going to keep throwing? Finally, it will break. You have to follow through. You know, I ended up doing a little over 2 weeks. The whole entire 21st Circuit, recused themselves off the case, and they had to flip it over to the Supreme Court, and they had to reassign the criminal charge I have. Um, but yeah, no, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I'd go to jail for those 2 weeks. I'd still send that email. Um, I would still, only thing I would change, the only thing out of all of that I would change, I would never have walked into the courtroom February 10th. There's no way. Knowing now, that's the only thing I would have changed. I would have either went on the run, or I would have stood there and just stood my ground and wait to see it for them to come in and drag us out of the house like they were threatening. Because a lot of that is giving permission. They need your permission, and they kept tricking me into my permission. And when they couldn't trick me, they kidnapped me. You know what I mean? And then when I talked about it, they kidnapped me again. You know, because she jailed me. I got jailed twice, and now I'm looking at 7 years, or up to 7 years, for this felony charge that's coming up real quick. That's in April. So, that's just a few months away, and they can give me up to 7 years. And I feel if the St. Louis County Courthouse has it their way, they will get me on 7 years, because they want to shut me up. They don't want me talking. That's why they did all they
yeah,
did. That judge was mad. That was retaliation. That wasn't anything other. There should have been whistleblower laws. There should have been something that could have stood there and been some kind of protection, but there's been none at all. Um, when I went in to
do
get
you have
arraigned.
anybody do you have anybody as of right now that, is resourceful in trying to help you with your case at all and, the future case that you're speaking about with this felony charge?
No, I'm on my own. It's
So
me.
you're pretty much just trying to get your story out there, hoping that somebody will come around and,
No,
pick
no.
up the story elsewhere. You're
I'm
just getting it out.
well to
Like, "I'm
keep
standing up. I've had enough."
right. Well, the picking up the story, yeah, but I'm not looking for like law representation. I'm not looking for any of that. It's just me. I'm just gonna go in there. I mean, they don't have a charge. They're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be defending, or it doesn't exist. I didn't threaten the judge, and it was not tampering. I did not tamper with her. There's no facts upon the record. I've never been able to face my accuser. They didn't, they took all those options from me and said they had a grand jury and did an indictment. Well, if you ask me, they just said that. Like nothing happened. They didn't jury, bring all these people together in a grand jury and talk about they didn't do any of that. What they did was they did some paperwork. They did some, you know, paper shuffling here and there, and said that they did that. And so, send me paperwork saying that they indicted me and come back with the true bill. And now I have this court date. They didn't, this is all a setup. It's not even, in this lack of better words, it's fake. You know what I mean? This whole charge, this whole, everything they're doing, it's fake.
Yeah, most definitely. It seems like you've had a long haul of this, and I'm pretty sure you're probably just like, "I've had enough." And again,
I
I
mean,
commend you for you standing up and standing your ground, for your daughter. Not a lot of people can do that. I'm not saying that they won't. They just some people can't, and are very intimidated and worried
Oh,
about some other people have other
oh,
children or, things going on that might cause some type of discrepancy in their life that would be detrimental to them, and this has caused so many emotional issues with other people as well that, again, we've talked about this before on my podcast. It causes people to be suicidal, um,
yeah,
depend on drugs, all at the hands of these control freaks. And again, I'm going to continue saying this throughout every podcast. Accountability is our main problem.
yeah,
Accountability. Judges, law guardians, CPS holders, anybody that is supposed to
even
be
the
in a
people.
secure position to where they can help and they refuse to, those are the people that really need to be looked at and, need to be reprogrammed, I guess I would
Exactly.
say, because that seems as if what they're trying to do, unfortunately, when you're woke and you're aware of a situation, they might knock you down for quite some time, but people that are woke are not willing to bow down very easily. And that's one good thing with what's going on right now. A lot of people are rising up, and we sooner or later are going to make a change. And
Yes.
that's another thing that I will continue saying throughout each and every one of my podcasts because I solely believe, you know, uh, us together standing up, sooner or later reform will come. You know, there's a lot of groups out there and people to network with within each and everybody's state. Again, the more you network with the same people, you see that they're consistently online. Those are the people that you really want to speak to because they're willing to go the extra mile, to confront the proper. I don't even really want to call them authorities because they feel inferior for whatever reason. Um, but we'll make a change and we'll stand up. It's just very heartbreaking and traumatizing, not only to us as parents, but to these children. And that's the worst part about it. With the relationship with your daughter, I mean, it seemed as if you guys had a great relationship and then they just came in and kind of abruptly just torn that apart to pieces. And I'm
We
hoping to
did.
God maybe one day you guys can reestablish that.
Yeah, no, me and my daughter, we had a beautiful relationship. There was no issues between us at all. None whatsoever. Actually, the court proceedings was bringing us closer because Delilah could see everything. I was showing her everything. I was recording it all because it was questionable from the very beginning, from the from the start. I was never on the docket. I showed up to a court hearing and didn't tell, it was like the first or second court hearing, and I didn't tell my lawyer I was going to go, and I just showed up and there's nobody there. Like the judge isn't there. My lawyers aren't there. Like no lawyers. I'm like, where is everybody? I tried to check the docket. I'm not on the docket. Call his office. They say he's in court. So he calls me later and he like just was reassuring me he was in court that morning and not to worry. And that's when I was like, but I was there and I didn't see you because he had no clue I was going. And that's when he was like, oh, well, we have court in the back. And I was like, in the back, court in the back. That's probably why you don't see it. So it was instantly a red flag. They're having court in the back chambers, and I'm not on the docket. And I've never been on the docket. And when we were going to court in person before COVID, I was always the last one in the courtroom seen. There was never anybody around when I would see the judge.
Are you saying that they held a court? Are you saying that they held a court appearance in the judges' chambers? Is that what you mean about
Yeah, that's what
chambers?
he told me. Yeah, exactly. That's what he told
I'm
me.
kind
That's
of a
why.
little confused on that. Is
Huh?
that something typical that they do in your state?
That's what they do here in St. Louis County courts. Yeah, that is something that they do. I'm not the only
Oh
one
my
that.
goodness.
So there's that, and then I have a recording of another hearing where they put me in the hall, and the judge and the GAL and his, because I was pro se at this point again, and
Were
because
you
I
in
went,
timeout or something? What would they put you in hall
yeah,
for?
pretty much why they talked about our future. I have a recording of me sitting out in the hall recording them from in the courtroom. It was my hearing, like the conference hearing that I showed up to, and they put me out in the hall and had this conference hearing
Did you have
without
a
me.
lawyer at that time representing you?
No, I did not. No, not at that time. I went through them.
So
I
you had no
like,
lawyer in there.
no, I didn't have a
There
lawyer at
was
that
no
time.
lawyer in there, and then they took you out of your hearing and placed you in the hallway. Did you ever
Yeah.
get transcripts of that to, not that it probably
No,
would help
I didn't
manipulate
think about
those,
that. No.
but that's
Um,
odd.
and then another court hearing, I'm pro se again. The judge had switched her room, like she was in a different courtroom, and there was a note on the door that says, "Go to this courtroom. That's where the judge is." So I go to that courtroom. Well, his attorney says she showed up there, and I never showed up. So she fills out this conference paperwork stating that I didn't show up for court to move forward, that they want to do XYZ. File stamps it and everything and lays it on the judge's desk just for the judge to sign. So like it's already filed. But me and the judge were in another courtroom. So I did show up to court. So I have these two court documents that have the same date that say different things, one with the judge's signature, one without. But this was fraud upon the court, what Kathleen Shaw did that day, stating that I didn't appear in court, and she went ahead and had court without me or the judge, and filled out this paperwork and time stamped it, and just then was going to have it. I'm surprised she didn't rubber stamp it with the judge's signature, actually, and then was going to have a judge sign it after the fact.
Jeez,
Was
right.
fraud upon
Yeah.
court. That is what she did was terrible, and people don't stop to think about that, but it's not a good thing. You don't do fraud upon the court. It's not supposed to be anyway. You're supposed to look down
There's
on
so
that.
many civil rights that are being violated numerous times in these situations, and it's sickening because, again, another thing we speak about a lot on this show is that it doesn't matter to them because they feel nobody's going to represent you in those situations. And again, it goes back to accountability. Who do you hold accountable if somebody is violating your civil rights, if they are putting your child in harm's way, if they're mishandling your case, if they're fraud upon the courts or no due process? What do you do then?
Well,
Besides
they
have to
need
be a
to
voice and stand up.
you record. That's what you do. You
Say
record
what?
everything. Record everything. That is why I'm able to have and be out here talking about it, because I have all the I have the recordings. That they make it look like you're crazy when you go around and you tell somebody, because you have no proof of this. You have nothing to show them. So on the inside, you know what's going on, but on the outside, people looking in, hearing you, are like, this person's just crazy, or they're like a scorned ex, or they're just not happy with their custody, decision,
Yes.
and they use this to their advantage. And it's a good cover for it. It's an excellent cover, but I was recording everything. They weren't expecting someone to do that. Like, they forgot that part in the plan to, make sure nobody records anything. Cause I've been recording for I'm going on 3 years now in this court system. And I started in the beginning because he told me they had court and back. I have that conversation recorded. I just knew, like, from the beginning, when I wasn't on that docket, something was wrong. I never was on the docket. This isn't even right. This isn't even real. They're just trying to take my kid. And I was right. That's all it was. It was about taking her. And in that one recording that you, now, not that one you keep talking about, but the one on the February 10th, the judge tells Delilah, and you have to listen to it. She says, "Say goodbye to mom and dad." When she was trying to take Delilah before I got arrested, she tells Delilah to say goodbye to mom and dad. And I'm like, why would she say that? Right. That's weird. So my theory is they take my custody, take her from me, give her to dad. We've accused him of abuse. So then now CPS comes in, finds him abusive, and takes my daughter. She's trafficked. She's gone. I mean, this is what they do. So that's what
How
I'm
old's
afraid
your daughter again? She's 14?
15. She just turned 15 over the summer.
Old.
So that's what I'm afraid that they'll end up getting my sole custody and legal and giving it, they'll end up giving it to him. And then because these accusations were made in the past, this is how they keep the cash cow going. Then they'll come in, take her. Now she's in foster care. And, they get that.
See, the thing with foster care with older children, unfortunately, typically it takes a while to put older children in foster care. So they wind up back in the system, of course.
Well, they traffic them.
Group homes or.
Well, they're just trafficking them. Yeah. There's no coincidence that 800,000 children in the United States come up missing a year, and that the family court system is a $50 billion industry. That's not, just by chance that they're doing this, and they're doing it to our children. And, more and more people are starting to see this, but we need to come on and stop this, because I mean, these kids are getting tortured, and there's so much trauma, it's really sad. They're breaking their spirits.
Oh, they're doing more than that. They're doing more than that. And the unfortunate part about it is a lot of people that are aware of this situation, the majority of them that are aware of the situation are the ones that have already went through it or are still going through it. The ones that we need to wake up to get more crowd are the other ones living outside of this box that they luckily and thankfully don't have to deal with the situation. Because the more people that come together, the more we can change. We have a right. We have a right as a people to overthrow the government, if they are not upholding their oath. And that's what people fail to realize, the power of numbers, the power of people, of what we can do together if we actually just stand up and do what's right. Um, so
It
again,
doesn't
yeah, it's extremely disgusting.
very easy to stand up and do what's right. It's easier than what they're doing. Way
Mhm.
easier. But
Yep.
yeah, they're just it's a rough situation, because if people aren't directly involved, you will be. Because if it's not you, it's going to be your grandchildren. I mean, they're coming for our kids. They're coming for all of them. So at some point, it's going to be you. Just because it's not
Well, they already
now.
have the CPS. They already have the CPS close knit with schools, and they're getting to the point to where, if your kids miss a couple days of school, they're calling the school's calling CPS on you, and then you're having them knock at your door. You could have a normal situation going on with your kids, very well taken care of. And once that first time knock comes from CPS, people will go, "Oh, it's okay. It's over with. It's unfounded." No, it's not, because they are never going to leave. You are going to constantly see them throughout your whole entire life, in your child's life, unfortunately. They have their claws dug into you.
Well,
And I know that from personal experience.
he had called CPS on me 2 or 3 times. And they did. They come in, they knocked, and come checked my house out and went away. They never came back. So I didn't experience CPS like everybody else. They never came back in my life until he called again. And then
Right.
they'd show up and they'd interview. But Delilah is well spoken. I mean, she's like, I am safe, I'm all right, and that was the end of it with CPS. Like, what, obviously they were, just because her dad is a narcissist, and they have issues. I feel bad for him and his wife, because they're really sick. They really do have some issues, and it's sad for them. But they're inflicting their issues and what their problem is on, like, my daughter and I. This narcissism, this control, it's really weird. Something else is going on there, I think. I'm not really sure what's going on with them. I've been checking some records and stuff, and so some things are questionable, because people do stuff and you don't know what they're involved in until you start looking. And now that you look, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have looked. It's one of those kind of situations. So I just really hope my daughter just is okay, because I don't know. They don't let me talk to her. She said she was okay in that court appearance, but she was heavily drugged. You could tell. Um, Everything was, I'll have to ask dad. I'll have to ask dad. I'll have to ask dad. My dad's sick, and they've called hospice in. And I was telling her this, and her response was, well, I'll have to wait till dad gets back and ask him if I can call grandpa. If that's not red flags to people, I don't know what else can be. This is your grandfather that's ill, and you have to ask your father if you can call your grandpa. Mom just called and said that grandpa's sick out, and you want to call him, but you have to wait until your dad gets back from St. Louis and find out if you're allowed to call your dying grandfather. That
It
that's
sounds
not
like she's very scared and timid.
that's not normal. Like, that is not, it's not right. And the GAL is sitting next to me and hearing this, and nothing, like, that didn't put a red flag. But my new GAL, Kimberly Whittle, was on the GAL phone call that was released here in St. Louis of the Kids for Cash. And I found out that she's actually a judge in St. Louis County. And she's a GAL. And that is who they decided to give me as a GAL, was Kim Whittle. And she was on the leaked Zoom call.
Yeah, those people are just as corrupt, if not more. That's the sad part about it. Again, what does it go back to? Cash. That's it. That's all they're worried about. It's not about the safety of our children. It's not about their mental stability. It's not about you being a parent. It's control and manipulation. And it sounds like your daughter is definitely intimidated and being controlled, because at 15, she should be able to, at that age, kind of freely speak and go back and forth between conversations, whether it's with her grandfather or father, without having to feel scared. And that's what it seems like. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's just what it seems like
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. I just the fact
But then
that
that's another way. Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying that's just another way of controlling her, which is going to cause more issues down the line with her growing up, and that's the unfortunate part about it. Hopefully you can regain some type of relationship back with her, and give her the advice she needs as a parent, and help her through her future, without this having to affect her too much. But we're humans, and it's going to affect her somehow, and maybe it'll affect her to where she'll have her own story one day, um, and she'll pull out of it. But
She wants to help kids when she gets older. So, this may just put her in a direction of that. Because anybody that heard those audios of her, she was in her, standing in her truth, what she wanted. That was her. That was not me coaxing her to do anything, say anything. That was her. And she was standing in it. I mean, she went up against that judge where most adults wouldn't have stuck up for themselves with that judge. But my 14-year-old stood up for herself, and they shut her down. So she's going to have issues with the court system, with, police officers. I mean, that she's not going to have any faith in the system at all, which I don't blame her. But they also was telling her when they did that you have no voice, that it don't matter. We don't care. Your mother can't keep you safe. I mean, they really just stripped her of any kind of security that she had, because I've always kept her safe. But I couldn't that time, And so I can see why she's being the way she is, because you have to survive, the brain goes into survival mode. So if I comply, I mean, everything was orchestrated in our conversations when she testified in court. That was all, it was all planned out, setting it up to a narrative that they want going forward. That wasn't a true testimony, because it was
somebody asked on here if your somebody on here asked if your daughter was medicated. Yeah, she took some medication prior, or previously. Who actually recommended for your daughter to be on medication, and what was the reasoning for it? Do you know?
So she's never been on any medication, except for she had been experiencing migraines like every day since court start, like not since court started, but the second year of court, she started getting migraines like every day. I guess because of the stress. So she was on some medication to help with the migraines, like a blood pressure medicine, because it helps with the headaches. But other than that, she's never been on any kind of meds. And it was when she was involuntarily committed into Children's Hospital from court, they put her on meds. And they talked with Venus Jackson and her father about these meds. I never was, communicated with in making this decision. So other people made this decision for her to be put on these meds, and it's for anxiety and what is it? It's like they say it's like a blood pressure pill. It's called clonidine. So it's in the same group. I know that like people that are addicted to heroin and stuff will abuse these pills, this medication, and it's a high risk to being of taking it. It's a black box warning. So it was the Children's Hospital that recommended it, and Venus Jackson and her dad that made the decision to put her on the meds. And so, and I only know that she's on this because of court in November. I didn't know what they were giving her until we went in on the 5th because they gave me
Is she receiving any counseling?
huh?
Know if she's receiving any counseling as well throughout all this?
They say she's got counselors. I've tried to connect with the counselors and stuff and get the medical records, but her dad has made it where I can't get any. They won't talk to me. I can't get anything. I can't get any records. I can't even get her school records. And I should be able to get all these. There's no reason I shouldn't.
Yeah, it's unusual because
even the GAL said I should be able to get the
it's
records.
unusual. Yeah, even parents that don't have custody at all are allowed to have medical and educational records. So the fact that you're again being blackballed, I guess if that's what you would call it,
Cut
for
out.
not having these.
This is the real parent alienation.
I'm sorry?
This is the real parent alienation. This is what it's like. What they're doing to me, where they've just, I mean, they kidnapped my kid and now I can't get to her. I can't talk to her. I can't see her. Nothing. She's just gone. I'm just erased. I'm gone. And they've, got her manipulated. This is truly the parent alienation and the sickness of it. So they've messed with her to where she, what is it like? What's that called? The Stockholm syndrome? That's what it's called, right? That's kind of like what this is in a sense. Fake it. What she tell me.
Most definitely. And the courts are completely in charge of it as well. They're allowing it and
yeah, it's the perfect system for a narcissistic parent that wants to control and continue to abuse and do whatever, It's
crazy because you know what's funny? Like I said, it's so hypocritical because it's like the narc and abuser can come in there and pick up these new vocabulary words and these trends, if you want to call them, because that's what I've been calling them lately. It's like a new trend to talk about parental alienation, but it's the actual abuser that's doing it. When the protective parent comes into court and explains, it's not me that's doing the alienating, it's the father or the mother that's the abuser or, the criminal, I guess if you call them. They're the ones that are doing it. It's just so controversial. It's like, wait a minute, hold on a minute. It's okay for these people to do it blatantly and you're allowing it, but then when the protective parent comes in and tells you that they're doing it, you criminalize them. You look at them as if they're like a bad habit that needs to be dropped or something. You know what I mean? Like what is going on? It's the court system is just backwards when they're dealing with these situations. And I can't for one, I applaud anybody that wants 50-50 chance. More power to you with your kids. But a lot of these parental alienation groups are giving a lot of resources and advice to some of these abusers out there, and they're taking advantage of it and they're using it in the system. And that's why I call it a trend, because that's exactly what the courts are allowing them to do. They're allowing them to take this new trend and use it against the protective parent, whether you're male or female. I don't bash men. I'm not against men. The majority of the women that go in there, though, unfortunately, right? The majority of the women that do go in there, or parents that do go in there, majority of them have been women, unfortunately, that are suffering at the hands of this. And this is what's very upsetting about it. A lot of these courts, and we've said this too, need to be fully educated on what they're dealing with. You cannot categorize every single court case or hearing in reference to, say somebody that's just going in for a simple custody battle. When you have abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, or anything, pertaining to something that will effectively literally destroy mentally or physically or however way you want to put it a child's well-being. These are the things that these courts need to pay attention to and take heed notice to, also educate themselves on. Some of the courts are and just don't care. They're blatant about it. They don't care. We took an oath. even though we're going to abide by the oath, we don't care. We have that black robe power and we're going to do as we please. Because again, accountability, we can do what we want.
Yeah, there's none. Well, I mean, Judd Zellweger, she's still on the bench. She just was moved from family court to like criminal court. So, but she's still on the bench. Like nothing happened. To the 37, 38 GALs on the phone call, including nothing's happened. Any, they're all just going on about their business, like everything's okay. But it's not okay. What's going on it's not okay at all.
Oh, you said the right
It's
word, business. You said the right word.
exactly. It's
That's
just comes
exactly
to
what it is.
down
It's
to
a
when
business.
when when is the parent going to draw the line and stick to the line and not move and say I'm not going to comply to that? It's not in the best interest of anybody, and stand their ground. I mean, I don't know what else anybody can do, because you can make all these laws, you can put more laws in, but if they're not following what's already in place, they're not going to follow anything else. And educating them isn't going to work. You need a clean house. You need to like go in and clean house, take them all down off the benches, and put in new people and start some kind of a new system, because it's working just fine and it's not in the best interest of anybody. And so it needs to be, you know, done with, just taken off the board and start in a better system that's meant to help people and not harm them, because you can't fix it because it's not broke.
Somebody asked, how long have you been fighting for throughout this whole process?
We started in 2019. And we're going 2022. So, and she's been gone this last year. She's been, they took her in February. So it's almost a year since I've been with my child. And I've only spoke with her 5 minutes on the 5th of November at a court hearing. They finally proved life, and I got to see that she was okay. And other than that, we've had no contact. When they put her in the hospital, I couldn't see her. When they moved her out of state, she didn't even come home for her clothes or anything. I mean, they just took her. That was it. Like, they got a phone call and she was gone. She left with whatever she had with her when we went to court on February 10th. She just had a little backpack with a few things in it, and that's all she left here with. Like, everything's here, you know.
Yeah.
It's you just don't leave and not come back home. Like, it's not okay, and it's not normal, and it's not fair to her. And then her friends, it's not fair to her friends. This is how it affects people, and it just spreads out so much. Like, okay, so Delilah gets taken, so I'm affected, and then her friends are affected, which affects their grades, and then that affects, you know, everything. Like, it just keeps going out. So they reach a lot of people with this stuff. So it's not just I'm being abused, but these kids are being abused that are friends with her. Like, what do they think about it? Their friend's there one day and then she's just gone. I know her best friend's been struggling with it. So they're creating damage in children that aren't even directly involved with the family court. It's, actually really sad. So a lot of times these things are about, the money, well, all the time, but they have to create all this conflict because none of it really existed. The whole time I kept saying, what happened to the family vote? Like, this never would have been a question or an issue. It would have been 2 against 1. It would have been solved, but the family doesn't have a say.
Angela Salinas joined.
Hello? Hello? Hi, Angela. Can you hear me? Okay, I guess we're having some technical difficulties again, which is odd. I'm going to wait a little bit to see if Angela's still out there.